Okay, so trade season begins on the 15th, and while there's been talk about some bigger names than the dudes on this list, these 5 guys are still pretty good NBA players who can make impacts on good teams or whatever, so I figure why not? Maybe they get traded this season. They could also get moved in the offseason because quite a few of these dudes are on 2-year contracts or whatever. Anyway, the first one's JJ Redick. The Pelicans are bad, of course, and we know JJ's skill set. Shooting, floor spacing, moving around the floor like a chicken with his head cut off. And he makes about $13.5 million, which is definitely a tradable contract. And I could see quite a few teams taking him on, whether it's a contender who wants to get one more guy, or it could also be a solid team that's looking to just get a little extra push, whether it's to the postseason or just general respectability, I guess. Now, for JJ's sake, we can hope that he gets on a good team so that way his playoff streak can remain intact. Of course, whoever takes him on is going to have to worry about him sucking on defense. I mean, at one point in his career, I think his effort was enough, but you know, at this point, especially if a good team is going to take him on and you're going to be open to play him a lot of minutes in the postseason where teams are going to go at him specifically a little bit more, then that's something you got to be wary of if you want to take him on. But his offensive impact is certainly still there. I mean, even with all that defensive stuff, he was still really important for Philly during the postseason and all that. The next dude can also make some shots, but he can also do a little bit more off the dribble, Marcus Morris. I think he just had like a 30-point game against the whoever's. And, you know, the thing with Morris is this is the type of guy you take on if you want some toughness. But like I said, you also need some scoring because he's not going to go out there and just set screens and do whatever. He is going to look to shoot, and he is going to occasionally ISO and shoot some contested mid-rangers, and his 3-ball is pretty alright as well, but he also gives you some switchability on defense, and he's just a guy who, if you put him in a specific role, whether it's a 3 or the 4, and he's not one of your top, let's say, 3 options on offense, he could definitely be valuable for you. And for the Knicks, I mean, I think this is why they gave a lot of these guys 1-year deals or 1 year plus a non-guaranteed second year, is so they could kind of get the best of both worlds, which was maybe we'll actually be good, but if we suck, then we can basically just hit the reset button about 30 games into the season or whatever. As far as a couple teams who I could at least picture wanting Morris, one would be the Utah Jazz because they're desperate for some scoring. I guess the fear with him on that team is that he would take shots away from whoever, but I just think they need more dudes who can make shots. You know, they're playing quite a few guys off their bench who have not been very good. Granted, one of them has been Joe Ingles, and we just assume that he will get better as the year goes on. But if I look at the Jazz rotation, Jeff Green is playing 19 minutes a game. I'd rather just have Marcus Morris playing all of that. And you could probably find a few more to get Morris to about the mid-20s or so, and that could give you a nice about 6-man rotation, 7-man rotation, assuming Joe Ingles and Mike Conley get it going. I think that's an idea for the Utah Jazz, taking on Marcus Morris. And while I'm sure Jazz fans don't want to give up on Dante Exum, I feel like it's time to give up on Dante Exum. He makes $9 million, it makes the money almost a match. I mean, he could be an asset in several trades, whether it's Morris or somebody else, because it would require the other team having to see Dante Exum and all that and be like, okay, we can actually do something with this guy. But yeah, Marcus Morris, potential trade dude. Next up, Robert Covington. Now, I'll be honest, I don't agree with this one. I don't think the Wolves should trade Covington because he's going to be 29 in a month, which is still young enough to where he can help you for the next few years while you're severely underpaying him for being one of the best 3-and-D guys in the league. And to me, it's like, Karl Anthony Towns is 24, Wiggins is in year 6 and finally taking a jump. So I don't think Minnesota should really be in the business of giving away good players, unless the return for Covington would be amazing. But the reports are still out there, so I have no choice but to put him in here nonetheless. Even if, again, if I was Minnesota, I would not trade Robert Covington. I think they could use all the good players they can get. I don't really think they should keep on doing the get picks and young players thing, because, do we really want another Anthony Davis situation with Karl Anthony Towns? I mean, I know, we're years down the road from that, but when you have a guarantee of Robert Covington for the next 3 seasons, shouldn't you just hold on to it? Anyway, the Houston Rockets have been rumored. They can still move a couple picks. I just don't really know how they make the money work unless they just wanted to swap Eric Gordon for him, which I don't really think the T-Wolves should do that. So, I don't know. But if Covington's really available, then wouldn't basically every team in the league want him? I mean, he's a pretty easy fit basically everywhere, so anybody who has $11 million in trade assets and some pick lying around should be in the running for Robert Covington if this is legit. Anyway, now we move on to the Spurs. Not DeRozan or Aldridge, but Rudy Gay, actually. Making $14 million the next 2 seasons. Gotta give a credit to Rudy. He really has changed his game up since he went to the Spurs. He's not shooting as much. He's not hijacking the offense as much. And he's just kind of flowing within the system a little bit more, and you would hope that if anyone were to take him on, that he would be doing the same things, because this is a guy who can give you some real offense. I mean, the fear is, you give him the ball and it's ISOs and face-up jumpers and a relatively efficient 16 points a game on, no playmaking. But if he's going to be this 20-something minute a game role player guy who just kind of does what the coach tells him to do and takes shots when he's open and that's about it, then okay, that's a good player. As far as the Spurs' motivation to do this, they're not good. They're only 2.5 out of the 8th seed. It's just, hooray. Do you want to parade for that one? I don't know. There's a chance the Spurs just become buyers and they just go all in on trying to get to the 7th or 8th spot in the West, but are you accomplishing much by doing that? Maybe if you think DeJounte can still be really good and he's your way of getting back up into the midpoint of the West, or potentially the top if he becomes like a superstar or something. But it still feels like you're just kind of kicking the can down the road if you go that route, in my opinion, because you got to figure out this DeRozan Aldridge thing eventually. But figure I mentioned Rudy Gay. And the last one. This one is a little bit more of I don't really know if this will happen, but I want to talk about it anyway. Bogdan Bogdanovich, who is playing pretty good for the Kings. He's got this restricted free agency, and they haven't come to a deal, and they got a lot of guys, between Fox, Hield, Bagley. All 3 of those dudes are going to end up getting paid a little faster than you might think at this point. Still got Harrison Barnes who's around. It's just, it might be tough to really slot Bogdanovich in there, especially if he wants to come off or if he wants to start, right? And I'll be honest, sometimes when I watch Bogdan play, I think he can average over 20 a game. Now, I don't know if I really believe that, but every now and then I'm like, oh, this dude, he could do some stuff. He's shooting 37% on 7 threes a game right now, So he definitely has some offensive stuff to him. And if he really was available, I could picture a lot of teams wanting him. Like anybody who's desperate for some scoring and anyone who just wants to take a chance on a dude who hasn't really had the opportunity to really go all out. He's 27, he's making $8.5 million. Now, of course, you're going to have to deal with his restricted free agency if you trade for him. And I'm pretty sure the Kings, even with their injuries, they don't want to bottom out this season. They want to make the playoffs, which, by the way, they currently are the 7th seed. They've won 3 in a row. They've been pretty tough, even with all the injuries. Sean Holmes has been amazing for some reason. So, we'll see with that one. Again, that one might be a little bit of a reach on my part, but maybe it isn't. I don't know. Anyway, I think that'll do it. I'm really hoping that there's a bunch of trades basically on December 15th, when, of course, everybody can be traded who change teams in the offseason. One, because it'll be fun. Two, because it'll give me a whole bunch of videos to make. So, there we go. We'll see what happens.